So I've been having kind of a problem with movies and contemporary media lately in that I feel like they've been aiming lower, going for the cheap shots and stabbing in the dark rather than lining up their sights and taking ambitious leaps to get to where they want to be. Or at least that's a trend that's going to immerse, maybe. Some films feel like they just want to be relevant and in the now, stuck with an identity that's only based on its current existence, with no thought for later. Stuff that's good enough for the masses at this particular moment, but then will head on their way to who knows where later. Some studios are more about making money and replicating a successfully structured platform via streaming services now, rather than making artfully thoughtful films. Maybe more so than ever. Or maybe not. I don't know. I guess I can't say too much has changed because that's kind of always been the case, but, just among different platforms. Whereas before it would have been like in cinemas and, I don't know, on VHS or something, however they would have structured their business with all that stuff. The same kind of thing is going down. It's just that streaming is a thing now and all that kind of stuff. There's new considerations, but it's really the same selling points and just on different platforms. And so we have to hold out for the passionate filmmakers behind them to gloriously emerge and come out, with the good stuff. Which, don't get me wrong, happens routinely, okay? Good stuff is coming out all the time, like every single year. I'm blown away by tens of titles, which tens doesn't sound like that much, but not that... Tens is a lot, okay? I'm talking like 50 movies a year or something that just blow me away, that I absolutely love. And I'm saying that this happens routinely all the time. This isn't just like sometimes or whatever. I'm saying that good original stuff is coming out every year, even taking into consideration this shit show of a year for cinema in 2020, in which, cinemas are closed left, right, and center and stuff. Some are open in particular places and stuff, but movies aren't quite coming out. Movies are getting pushed back and all this kind of stuff. And it's a very confusing and bad time for movies and stuff, but even in this year, even amongst all that bullshit, we still got titles like The Hunt and Birds of Prey, which I think are awesome, to be honest. Even if they're not quite your taste, I'm sure, I guarantee that there is something else that came out this year that you could be into. I know Palm Springs came out this year. I haven't seen that yet, but I really want to see that. It's not out in Australia, which is annoying to me. And yeah, I feel like a lot of good stuff has come out, and I don't know, maybe I'm just delusional. Maybe I'm losing my mind from a lack of movies or something, but even 2020, it ain't perfect, but I don't feel like it's completely doomed and useless and horrible and empty. I think there's a light side to this stuff. But those couple movies that I just named there, being The Hunt and Birds of Prey, are just two examples. And for every two come 12 more that just don't feel that passion. There was your Artemis Fowl, which came out earlier this year, which, look, I haven't seen, to be honest, but is apparently just the most bland and least personality having movie that could ever exist. And then there's your other stuff like The Kissing Booth 2, which granted I also haven't seen and also isn't for me, but I guess you get the idea that these aren't movies that are going to be raved about and remembered fondly of in 20 years, and I'm talking even from the target audiences. Whereas when I think about their contemporaries from a different generation, say something like Mean Girls, I guess is what something like The Kissing Booth 2 is probably going for. I don't know, I haven't seen it, so I don't know, there's not much I can tell you, but I'm guessing that's kind of the vibe that it's going for. It's going for that vibe. It's probably going, it's trying to be Mean Girls, basically. Not entirely. I'm not saying it's a rip-off of Mean Girls. I'm sure it's very different. I don't know. I'm just saying it's probably going for something similar. But the thing is, Mean Girls, it's been out for 16 years, all right? And the thing about that is that Mean Girls is still a movie that gets memed. It gets referenced. It gets quoted all the time. People know it, It's in the zeitgeist. Mean Girls is, for our generation, I guess, it's a classic movie. Even though personally, I think it's just fine. I don't love Mean Girls by any stretch. I do think that people really do love it, or at least know it. Everybody knows Mean Girls, right? But I just don't think that that's going to happen with The Kissing Booth 2, in another 16 years. I just don't see that happening, really. It just doesn't come across as a movie that is intentionally made to be remembered, or even from the target audience. I don't feel like they're going in thinking, yes, this is going to be the classic thing that I reference to in 30 years. This is my favorite movie ever. It's just not, doesn't have that kind of reputation. reputation. I just don't see that kind of thing happening quite so much with regards to the sheer growth in production numbers per year. Like with a quick Google search and finding this graph by a guy named Stephen Follows here, you can see that by the year 2000, there were maybe about 350 movies coming out a year. But compare it to 2016, I guess this graph is a bit old. It's starting to reach up to the 800s, and I'm sure that by 2020 it's even higher, and we'll be heading into the thousands if we're not already there, and if a certain stupid disease doesn't fuck everything up in terms of progress and people going to cinemas, that is. That's a scary thought. Let's not get too far into that. So with more movies coming out, you'd think that a similar percentage of memorable movies would be coming out compared to 20 years ago. But if you ask me, maybe it's kind of the opposite. And again, that's not to say that good movies are not coming out, or original movies. They are all the time. I just need to reiterate this fact like every single time I say any point. I do think that good movies are coming out. I do. I love movies, and I don't want to speak too badly of them. I'm okay with them. This year's been a bit shit, but I'm still okay with them. But what I'm talking about more has to do with what movies are going to be remembered, what movies are going to be recognized as classics years down the line. And I'm not just talking about from film buffs, you know, I'm not just talking about people like me. I'm talking the general population. I'm talking everyone, your mum, your brother, sister, your whatever. Like, if they're not a film buff, but they know something from whatever year, it's probably because it's considered at least somewhat of a classic, or it's at least memorable. This has more to do with movies feeling timeless than good movies coming out. Because like, I feel like good movies came out last year, like, I don't know, what's a good movie from last year? Ready or Not. I think that's an awesome movie. I really like that movie. I've used it as examples before talking about original movies. Still coming out all the time. So it's a good example, I guess. It's still relevant here. Ready or Not is awesome. I like it. I think I'm going to be a fan of it for a long time, but I don't think that it's a classic. I don't think that it will be. I don't think that it's a movie that is going to be well remembered. I think that maybe people in the specific genre might appreciate it in years to come, but besides that, I think that it's going to be kind of forgotten. That's just a feeling I get with that kind of movie. Whereas a movie like Parasite, which like, you know, struck the world by storm or whatever, and won Best Picture and was the foreign movie that everybody loved and paid attention to. Like, I love Parasite as well, but the point is, I do feel like Parasite will probably be remembered. I hope, anyway. But I just feel like there's less of that nowadays. Like, I just feel like there are less movies that come out that do feel all that memorable in terms of what I think their reputations are gonna be like later. I'm not talking good or bad, I'm talking what is gonna be remembered later, specifically. And I could say that maybe that's because of all the competition. You know, like, more movies are coming out more than ever, and with that comes more bad stuff. That's just the case, and with so much entertainment and with so many choices and stuff, it can be hard to decipher what's going to be good and what's going to be bad, what's going to be memorable. And with that comes movies, good movies, even fantastic movies. It poses a challenge for those movies to stand out amongst the masses. And so that, yeah, even when the fantastic stuff does come out, even still, the general population, a lot of people, the general masses are probably still not gonna ever get the chance to even see this thing, or like even have the interest to see whatever hypothetical movie I'm talking about. It's a thing that is both good and bad for movies, because while I think that movies are probably more appreciated now more than ever, particularly in a world of internet and streaming and ease, there also comes less sacrifice, passion and commitment as an audience member. It doesn't feel like a big deal when that movie has been released on Netflix because, you know, of its very platform right there. And look, Netflix is a platform that I absolutely love. I mean, I watch it. It basically changed my life when it came out, and I don't even think that's an exaggeration. It's amazing. It's amazing what we have nowadays. Like, we're so lucky compared to even just 10 years ago or however long ago. But with that being said, I do think that Netflix and other streaming platforms, like, I don't just want to single out Netflix. This really goes for just the entire structure of a streaming service, no matter which one. But I'm just naming Netflix to, you know, make it simplistic, just to name the one that everybody knows. But yeah, with these streaming services, I also think comes this certain sense of disposability. Like, I think that it feels like less of a commitment when it comes to watching something on Netflix. Like, you can just chuck something on, and if you don't like it in 20 minutes, what's the big deal? Just turn it off. Why bother continuing with something that you don't like? But the thing is that, like, with movies in particular, long movies and stuff, you've got to give them a chance. Some movies don't start to really get really good until later down the line. And like, you know, some movies just click with you later. And if you're watching something on Netflix, which feels like there's so much of a choice and all this kind of stuff, and you don't like a thing within 20 minutes, it gives you an excuse. It kind of makes you feel like you should just be like, what else is here? Like, you know, it makes you not commit, and it makes movies feel like they are disposable. They feel like they're not that big of a deal. They feel like they're not epic. They're just these little things that you can chuck on and off at any time that you want. And I guess that's always been the case to an extent. It's just that the very free feeling of streaming brings this certain sense of disposability. That's what I'm trying to say without repeating myself too much. I feel like Netflix is a platform which is not for film buffs, the people that really want to appreciate a thing. It's not for people who want to linger on a thing and think about it for a while, who want to watch the credits, who want to just sit there after they've watched. You can see this with the feature that has the, you know, next episode's on in 5 seconds thing that they've got going. You can see this when they shove the next thing in your face. They want to push whatever's popular down your throat. You can see this with that kind of stuff. You can see what's on the featured pages, on the home pages and stuff. And sometimes you even have to like search actively for a thing that you want to watch. It can be hard to find something good or the specific thing that you want to watch because it's not exactly what Netflix wants to advertise. And yeah, you can see this kind of, I don't want to be too harsh, I don't want to be too dramatic here, but you can see this kind of dictatorship with what media to consume, at least by not force, but by suggestive advertisements and all that kind of stuff. Like, Netflix really wants to try and get you to watch whatever's popular at the moment. You know what I mean? Like, I know there's no season out at the moment, but when a new season of Stranger Things comes out, you think that that's not going to be the first thing that you see every time that you go on Netflix? It will be. I'm telling you that much, and I don't watch Stranger Things. The point is, Netflix is more designed to push and shove the next thing in your face. They're not too concerned with how much you like a thing. It's all about watch time. They just want to push and shove something else in there. They want to play something within 5 seconds because otherwise they might lose you. And, you know, just as a business structured like this, it makes sense. It's all about the watch time. It's all about getting you to stay on the platform. In a world where I owned Netflix, I'd be doing the same thing. It's a clever business model. And so the mission statement becomes obvious in that services like Netflix will want to produce content quickly, with as many superficial cliffhangers, if we're including TV too, and enticing fluff as possible in order to capture the masses' attention. That's the goal. And with that comes movies and shows that are trying too hard to be relevant to today, and to today alone. Long gone are the days where we get timeless films. Like, you know what, scratch that. A lot of original stuff comes out all the time. There's always good quality content. Like, lots of memorable stuff is coming out all the time. I keep repeating myself here, but I just want to make it clear. That is how I feel. But with all the good stuff that I do still think is coming out, also comes more bad stuff, more so than ever. And it can be kind of hard to ignore, particularly when something like Netflix is showing you that, you know, on the front pages and stuff. Like, not all the time. I'm not saying that like everything that they advertise is bad or whatever, and just like it's like this secret conspiracy where they just want to show you shit. I'm sure that's not the case. But yeah, the number of good and bad films has increased monumentally over the years. And I do think that films now feel less timeless. And let's just compare to not even a decade ago. I just want to look at something here. I don't want to be too much of a fanboy about it. I don't want to get people riled up and all that kind of shit about fandoms and all that kind of stuff. But let's compare something for a second. So compare the Avengers in 2012 to the Justice League in 2017. Maybe it's just because the Avengers was objectively better, or maybe it's because it was the first to do this type of thing. But when I'm thinking about both of these movies, I see the Avengers as being talked about in another 50 years. Like, it's always something that people are going to appreciate. You know, this generation of people are going to show our kids the Avengers. That's just a thing that's going to happen. But then, you know, I look at Justice League and I don't know, I even think that when the movie was new, like when Justice League came out, it didn't feel epic. It didn't feel like this rarity that we hadn't seen before. It kind of just felt like another superhero movie. Just felt like another movie where superheroes team up and fight a thing. And it just didn't feel that monumental. And maybe it's because of the structure of the entire franchise overall leading up to that point. Like, Superman's dead, but they're bringing him back already and all this kind of stuff. It feels very unbalanced, but I don't think that it's ever gonna be remembered as like this much of a classic. And I'm talking even from the fanboys. Like, I think that if you like Justice League, fair enough, that's all good. I kind of enjoyed it myself as well. Like, I don't completely hate it, but I do think that it's definitely not a movie that's gonna stand the test of time. We're not gonna be talking about it in 50 years. It's just not that much of a standpoint in the timeline of movies. It's just not, it's not that integral, I feel like. And, you know, maybe that's because there's an oversaturation of superhero movies. A lot of people feel like this, that the genre, there's just too much of it. Personally, I disagree. I feel like superhero movies can and do bring fresh stuff all the time with subgenres and a different focus and all that kind of stuff, like we saw with Joker last year, like we saw with The Boys, the TV show, which I watched for the first time recently and fucking loved. I do feel like superheroes have a big potential, but with the Justice League, it was instantly forgettable. It just wasn't that good. Just objectively, it just wasn't that good. It just didn't feel like a fully realized world that they had properly set up by the year 2017. And yeah, I just don't think that the fanboys are really gonna be that much of a fanboy anymore in 30 years or whatever, X amount of years later down the line. But I could be wrong, because when it comes to fanboys and all that kind of stuff, like, who the fuck knows what they're gonna think? You know, people get very passionate about this stuff, and maybe I'm completely wrong, because people apparently think that, you know, Batman versus Superman is like the best movie that's ever existed. I don't hate it, but it's clearly not the best movie that's ever existed. But some people, I do think, legitimately think that, and that's a strange thought. Anyway, this is kind of besides the point. The point is, I do think that movies feel less memorable. And this topic particularly came to mind when I was in the middle of Project Power, a recent Netflix film that came out like, what, a couple of weeks ago or something like that. During it, I sat there through Machine Gun Kelly cameos for some reason, whose music I like, but whose appearance in random but not very good movies like Bird Box, another example of what I'm talking about, is a bit weird. Through cliche and misuse of an interesting premise, and through terrible song choices, Project Power brought me a sense of immense mediocrity. It's the very definition of I guess this is good enough, but pretty stupid, that I've ever seen. And I just want to make a public service announcement here. I want to stop giving things like that a chance. If it's stupid, if it's bad, if it sucks, it's a waste of time. Instead of watching Project Power, I could have been watching any number of classics that I've been meaning to watch for the longest time. But it sucked me in with an interesting idea that it didn't even end up utilizing very well in the end. And also because it's kind of a rarity to see 2020 movies. Like, you know, I got excited. I'm like, a new movie? Oh my god. I'm jumping right on this shit. And it was a waste of time. It was not worth investing in, and I think that in a world with so much entertainment and conflict in terms of exclusive streaming services and what content is where, it's movies like these that are watched and maybe generally enjoyed. It's subjective after all. If you liked it, I get it, no hard feelings, no shade, but I do think even if you liked Project Power, or That Second Kissing Booth movie, or Bird Box a couple years ago, or Spencer Confidential, and whatever the fuck even was Scoob, or The Boy 2, or Coffee and Karim, or whatever the hell the wrong Missy is, I think that even if you liked those and any other myriad of aiming for the masses middling movies like those, that you aren't going to remember them in X amount of years' time. I could be wrong though. I could be coming off as just a super dick. I could be coming off as just this guy who wants to gatekeep what's good and bad, who wants to dictate what is good cinema. Like, I feel like I'm being too negative. I feel like I'm being that snobby, nerdy film buff guy who thinks he's better than everyone, saying all this kind of stuff. I'm trying not to be like that. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to tell you what's good and bad. I will tell you if I think a movie is bad and why I think it's bad. But I think that everybody should just like what they like I do. I think that, I don't know, I try not to be that too much of a judgmental person, which is sometimes kind of a contradiction when it comes to being a film buff, I guess. Because particularly on the internet, and particularly with film buffs and all that kind of stuff, we're a very judgmental folk, where a lot of people in that community assholes. Just straight up. Who do want to dictate what is good and what is bad. Who do want to tell you objectively that they're right. I try not to be too much like that. I try to be like, I can understand maybe why somebody likes this thing or this other thing or whatever. But, you know, we're not all perfect, and I can be like that sometimes. I don't want to be too negative when it comes to a medium that is so important to my life. It's an aspect to my life that it's very important, okay? I feel like maybe you guys know that. This is obvious, correct? But I get it. I get it from the other side as well, because like sometimes even the inner film buff in myself, or like from other people, I feel like are gonna judge me, are gonna hate me, it makes me feel dumb. When I like a movie like Dodgeball, for example, I know that that's not the best movie of all time. I know it's pretty stupid, but I like it a lot. It's funny. I quote it a lot. It's fun. Or say even a movie like Joker, last year's Joker. There was a lot of judgment when it came to this movie. Everybody had an opinion about it. And the thing is, like, there was like this weird kind of expectation or whatever. There was like this weird reputation that it had and people who liked it had. Like, if you liked Joker, that meant you were some sort of like school shooting edgelord incel or whatever. Like, there was this weird political kind of idea when it came to Joker, when I just think it was a good movie. I like Dodgeball and I like Joker, and it kind of makes me feel stupid sometimes when I like a particular movie with a certain reputation. And I feel like it shouldn't. I feel like that shouldn't be a thing. But when it comes to the negativity of the internet and film buffs themselves, it can be like that. It can be like that. And I think that this is something that a lot of film buffs struggle with, including myself. Like, it's hard not to take an opinion personally sometimes. It's hard not to judge somebody sometimes. It's hard to look at somebody straight in the eyes and be like, you liked that movie Like a Boss? Okay, that's fair enough. It can be hard to do that because objectively Like a Boss is just atrocious. Oh my god. But I try not to be too judgmental. I try. And it's honestly something that I struggle with sometimes. And I think that a lot of film buffs and that kind of thing would too. Or like, not even just film buffs, just like if you're kind of very interested in one particular thing. This is where snobbery comes from. This is where you've got your comic snobs, you've got your wine snobs, you've got your whatever, this and that. There's people who will be judgmental of the casual crowd in whatever, kind of particular area of pop culture that we're talking about. It's hard not to take an opinion personally sometimes. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, I don't want to be too judgmental, so I try not to be. I don't want to tell people not to like a thing. You can like whatever you like. And I don't like being like, this is definitively, objectively good or bad or whatever, and you're an idiot if you disagree with me, because I don't like that attitude. I think that's a shitty attitude. Anyway, yeah, like I said, I'm kind of straying from the point. Let's get back on track, shall we? The point is that I think a lot of movies that have come out recently are just straight up not going to be pop culture iconography, point references, or just something like that people really remember very well in years to come. They're not things that are going to be consistently quoted, like people quote movies like Shaun of the Dead or something like Jurassic Park or some other sort of beloved 90s IP. They aren't going to be talked about to the extent of the aforementioned Joker, which is one of the ones that will be remembered. I think a lot of movies now come out and succeed for the moment, but as soon as they're out of the limelight, they're just dropped immediately. And I think they're designed that way too. I think studios, streaming services, and hell, a portion of the audiences are fine with it too. And I think it's a worry. I mean, a pretty superficial worry, I guess. In the grand scheme of things, this is far from the most important, but a worry nonetheless. The whole streaming service focus too is something that's gonna take over, if it hasn't already. I mean, it pretty much has. And the streaming services just want to compete and to monopolize a franchise. It's why a studio like Disney had to end up making their own service, because others like Netflix were making too much money off of what was their property, and they realized, shit, we can do this too. But the thing that commonly happens here now is this flipping and switching in terms of what movies are where. Properties are bought, traded, sold, movies are moved on and off platforms. They become this disposable media that I'm talking about. The thing that concerns me when it comes to original movies that are either produced by or just distributed by streaming services are that in 20 years, I don't know where they're gonna be. I mean, it's already a mess. You know, you look up something, you're like, where was this TV show that I'm watching? Which platform was it on again? But there's something else to consider. It's still a fairly newish thing, really. Streaming, I mean. You know, we're kind of in streaming's infancy still. And it's growing and evolving each and every day. A new platform goes up here, a new one there. And you can't keep up with what's on where and what they provide. And so no movie or show or whatever is a guarantee to stay as is, even on the very exclusives like Disney, because Disney Plus doesn't have everything, like literally everything that they've ever produced on there. It's more like a condensed version of it, so that yes, most people will be perfectly happy with whatever is on there now, but I mean, there's still stuff missing. But then again, I wouldn't really know because I stopped subscribing to that as soon as my free trial ended, after I saw that really all I was interested in was The Mandalorian and a few random Simpsons episodes. And even that, I didn't really end up liking The Mandalorian that much. Please don't attack me for saying that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have Disney Plus. It's just not for me. It kind of feels like it's too childish. It doesn't really have like mature content. And I guess like, yeah, it's Disney. I guess you can say that you would expect that. But I don't know. I just, with Fox and all that stuff, like how they own Fox, I thought there was going to be more to it. But it's a bunch of High School Musical feeling bullshit, and it's just kind of a useless app to me personally. I can see why families and all that kind of stuff would be into it. For me personally, though, I'm like, I don't know. I'll probably buy it again when the Marvel TV shows come out, because I just want to watch those, and then I'll get rid of it again when they end. But that's really the only thing that I could see getting Disney Plus for again. But the point is, things move on and off streaming services all the time. And if a certain title isn't on any streaming services, which by the way happens all the goddamn time, like, oh my god, I just want to watch One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's a movie from like the 70s. It's like 40 years old or something, and it's nowhere. You can't find it. It's not on any of the Australian streaming services, and it's driving me crazy. I'm gonna have to buy a physical copy, or I'm gonna have to torrent it, but I'm an idiot old man that doesn't understand technology and all this stuff, and it just shouldn't be this hard. I just want to watch One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Specifically, it's just a movie that I've been wanting to watch. I've never seen it. So what happens when, in however many years, when certain deals that Netflix has surely made end? Where do all these movies go when copyright laws fuck things up for certain ones later down the line? That's what freaks me out a bit. And in a world where streaming is king and will likely only grow, I think that more and more of our entertainment is going to be made with all of this process in mind. Movies are going to be less commonly made with the intention of being shown in cinemas, and less commonly made with the intention of standing the test of time and being watched in decades down the line. I think a potential when it comes to this streaming culture is that movies are going to become more like how TV used to be, with a very of-the-week focus. There'll be something to talk about with a friend for the next day or so, but then they'll be forgotten. Quite dissimilar to the direction that I think a lot of filmmakers and film buffs would want to head in. I think that in that way, streaming is kind of like a way of letting the normies take over in terms of what entertainment dominates. Just like how the current slate of the MCU dictated this generation's idea of what a nerd is. Like, you know, a nerd isn't like this geek who's got freckles and glasses and gets beat up and shit anymore. A nerd is like a hipster who likes cool, different stuff, and not even different stuff, to be honest. A nerd is just everyone now. And this means that we will get more entertainment than ever, but with that will come more mediocrity too. I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing. There's pros and cons in everything, but that's just one direction that I could see things moving towards. Or maybe I'm just feeling pessimistic today. Maybe I'm just being a big old complaining pants. I don't know. I promise that I'm sorry if this was out of character or I'm being too negative when it comes to movies and all this stuff, but I do feel like movies are becoming kind of less memorable overall. I'm not saying that memorable movies aren't coming out. I do think that they are. But I'm saying as a medium as a whole, when it comes to the platforms like Netflix and all that kind of stuff, like I feel like that there's a different intention behind the scenes of movies. It feels like they have kind of different identity. It's starting to change a little bit, and it's starting to feel like movies are becoming a little bit less memorable. But I promise next week I'll get back to being positive about movies. I'll get back to being excited and happy about them and all that kind of stuff, like I usually am, because you know me, I like movies, you know this. But in the meantime, thank you for watching and all that stuff, and do the things which you know what they are, like, comment, share, subscribe and all that stuff. And thank you for watching. Thank you. Catch you on the flip side.